What are words worth? That's a question that was posed by the Tom Tom Club in their 1980 hit single, Wordy Rapping Hood. And it's a song that's close to my heart, really, because it's about language and it's about words. It fascinates me, especially the language used by politicians. The noted linguist and philosopher Noam Chomsky said in a recent interview that language primarily exists to express our thoughts. The father of modern linguistics, Ferdinand de Saussure, said that language is a system of signs. And what this tells us is that language shapes the way we view the world and indeed the way we think about things. People often pick up words and phrases that are used by others in the media and maybe even politicians and internalize these, and eventually those phrases and those words shape the way they view the world and indeed see certain politicians. One phrase that's stood out for me over the course of the last 5 years while Jeremy Corbyn was leader of the Labour Party was the phrase competent and effective opposition. And the people who used this deployed it as a discursive weapon against Jeremy Corbyn and those who supported his leadership. And what actually lays behind that phrase is the word legitimate, because that's how they saw their own politics, the politics of neoliberalism, the neoliberal consensus, if you will. That's a form of, in their mind, legitimate politics. Anything that falls outside of that narrow frame is deemed illegitimate. Now, who gets to decide what is legitimate and what is illegitimate? Well, guess what? It's not you, okay? It's the consecrating authorities, if I can use that Bourdieusian term, and those authorities are the media, the mass media, okay, the Conservative Party, the government, and right-wing Labour MPs, and maybe a few others in the Houses of Parliament. Those are the ones who say, yes, that form of politics is legitimate and that form of politics isn't. And another phrase that is often deployed is student politics. So anyone who supports the principle of human rights, either abroad or in this country, is apparently supposed to have left those at the university gates. Yeah, we're not supposed to be concerned about human rights because only students are concerned about that, apparently, which is absolute bullshit. Let's talk about another form of opposition. Constructive opposition. This is a phrase that's been resurrected by Keir Starmer and indeed the likes of Rachel Reeves. And it actually doesn't mean a goddamn thing when you think about it. Constructive criticism, from which it actually appears to have been constructed, if you will, is something completely different. It's the kind of criticism that you offer somebody in the hope that they may learn from their mistakes or maybe even improve their performance. And that's what the likes of Keir Starmer had in mind when he used that phrase, that people would probably read it in very much the same way. In fact, they actually had to go back 10 years for that phrase, constructive opposition. Because, let's face it, under Ed Miliband, the party actually forced very few U-turns on the government and seemed to run scared every time somebody said to them, you crashed the economy. They didn't disagree with that. They didn't bother to defend themselves. They just kind of sat there silently and went, yeah, we did, didn't we? Well, that's not good enough. That's not opposition at all. It does nobody any good. It's not good for democracy. And speaking of things that aren't good for democracy, the former Chancellor George Osborne offered his congratulations via Twitter to Keir Starmer. In fact, he spoke warmly about the reshuffle. He says, Keir Starmer's reshuffle is impressive. The Marxist nutters are out. Moderate left are in. When this crisis is eventually over and politics is resumed, the Tories are going to find that the 5 years when there was no opposition and no alternative has come to an abrupt end. Well, first of all, the thing that I'd like to say here is that when people use the word Marxist or Marxism and combine it with the word nutters to make to reinforce the pejorative, then they've probably never read any Marx in their lives. In fact, I would safely say that Osborne probably most definitely hasn't read any Marx. And if he has, he's probably read the Enid Blyton version. And there's this phrase, politics is resumed. He seems to think that politics doesn't happen outside Westminster, but all of us are involved in our own ways in the politics of everyday life. That's the form of politics that's routinely ignored by the likes of George Osborne and many of the MPs sitting in the House of Commons and the Lords who go to sleep in the House of Lords. Sajid Javid also offered his congratulations on the 4th of April. He says, "Congratulations to Keir Starmer, an honorable, compassionate public servant. Right now, more than ever in recent memory, the country needs an opposition working in the national interest, something he is very able to provide." Well, that was really a way of boxing Keir Starmer in so that he supports the government in the national interest, because that phrase national interest is also used as a weapon to keep people in line. And the last time I heard it, it was being used by the Lib Dems when they joined the coalition with the Tories back in 2010. And they propped up the Tories for 5 years and just allowed austerity to take place. In fact, they were the architects of austerity along with the Conservatives. So this whole idea of the national interest, well, it's just a load of baloney, really. That's it for now. Have a good Easter, what's left of it, and I'll see you soon.